The silence of deep space pressed against Kai Voss like a living thing, broken only by the steady hum of his salvaged ship's life support systems. At 30, he'd spent the last 8 years drifting through the outer reaches of the solar system, hunting for derelict vessels and abandoned stations that might yield enough salvage to keep him fed and fueled. It was lonely work, but Kai preferred the vast emptiness to the crowded colonies of Mars or the corporate surveillance of Earth. His weathered hands moved across the console with practiced ease, scanning the debris field that stretched endlessly through this forgotten corner of the Kuiper Belt. The drift runner was small but reliable, its hull scarred from countless encounters with micrometeorites and space junk. Today felt different, though. His instruments had been acting strangely for hours, picking up energy readings that didn't match anything in the databases. "What the hell?" Kai muttered, leaning forward as a new contact appeared on his screen. The signature was massive, easily 10 times larger than any human vessel he'd ever encountered. But that wasn't what made his heart race. It was the energy pattern itself. A complex, rhythmic pulse that seemed almost organic, like a heartbeat echoing through the void. He adjusted, his course following the signal deeper into the debris field. Chunks of ancient ice and metal drifted past his viewports like ghostly monuments to forgotten disasters. But as he drew closer to the source, Kai realized this was no ordinary wreckage. The ship, if it could even be called that, hung motionless against the starfield like a massive crystal formation. Its hull was translucent in places, revealing complex internal structures that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. Ice and cosmic debris had accumulated on its surface over what must have been millennia, creating a grotesque shell that couldn't quite hide the alien beauty beneath. "Jesus," Kai whispered, his breath fogging the viewport. In all his years salvaging, he'd never seen anything remotely like this. The vessel's design defied human understanding. Its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal frozen in time, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. His communication systems crackled with static, and for a moment, Kai could have sworn he heard something like music buried in the white noise. His hands trembled as he maneuvered the drift runner closer, magnetic grapples extending to secure his ship to what looked like a docking port half buried in accumulated ice. The rational part of his mind screamed warnings. This was clearly alien. Technology, possibly millions of years old. He should report it to the colonial authority. Let the scientists and military experts handle first contact. But Kai had learned not to trust authorities with his discoveries. They'd confiscate everything, classify it, and he'd be lucky to receive a finder's fee that wouldn't even cover his fuel costs. Besides, his instruments detected a breathable atmosphere beyond the airlock. Whatever this thing was, it seemed to be inviting him inside. Kai suited up, though his environmental reading suggested it wasn't necessary. His boots clanged against the alien hull as he crossed from his ship to the mysterious docking port. The airlock was clearly designed for humanoid beings, though the controls were covered in symbols that seemed to glow brighter as he approached. When he pressed his gloved hand against what looked like a control panel, the symbols flared with brilliant light. The airlock cycled open with a sound like wind chimes, revealing a corridor that stretched into bioluminescent shadows. The air that rushed out smelled of ozone and something floral. Impossible after eons in space, yet unmistakably real. Kai stepped inside, his suit's lights illuminating walls covered in the same shifting patterns he'd seen on the hull. But these responded to his presence, rippling outward from his footsteps like disturbed water. He'd expected dead corridors and empty chambers. Instead, he found a living ship that seemed to welcome him home. The deeper he ventured, the brighter the bioluminescent patterns became, as if the vessel itself was awakening from a long sleep. At the ship's heart, Kai discovered a vast circular chamber dominated by a single stasis pod. The transparent cylinder stood in the center of concentric rings covered in alien script that pulsed with soft light. Inside the pod, suspended in some kind of preservation fluid, floated a figure that made Kai's breath catch in his throat. She was unmistakably feminine, though clearly not human. Tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid, silver and hair that floated around her face like spun starlight. Even in stasis, she possessed an otherworldly beauty that made Kai's heart race. As he approached the pod, The ship's systems began responding more actively. Lights brightened, and a low harmonic resonance filled the air. The stasis pod's surface cleared completely, giving him an unobstructed view of the sleeping woman within. Her eyes opened suddenly, brilliant violet orbs that fixed on his with startling intensity. The pod began to drain, and Kai realized there was no going back. After thousands of years of waiting, something ancient and powerful had finally awakened, and somehow he knew his life would never be the same. The stasis fluid drained away with a sound like distant rainfall, and the pod's transparent walls retracted into the floor with mechanical precision. Vexandra stumbled forward, her legs unsteady after millennia of sleep, and Kai instinctively reached out to catch her. The moment their skin touched, even through his suit's gloves, an electric shock ran through both of them. She jerked back, speaking in a language that sounded like wind chimes mixed with ocean waves. Her violet eyes were wide with confusion and something that might have been fear. She was even more breathtaking up close, nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that seemed to contain galaxies of tiny stars and features that were hauntingly beautiful despite their alien nature. "I don't understand," Kai said slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm human. From Earth. I found your ship drifting." The walls around them suddenly came alive with new patterns of light, and when Vexandra spoke again, her melodic words were accompanied by a translation that seemed to come from the ship itself. "Impossible. The void sleep was meant for cycles, not eternities. What has become of the galaxy?" "Your ship is translating," Kai realized aloud. "How long have you been asleep?" Vexandra moved with fluid grace despite her disorientation, her hands trailing along the chamber's walls as the bioluminescent patterns responded to her touch. "The star charts will tell us," she murmured, and the chamber filled with a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. But many of the star systems she expected to see were gone, collapsed into neutron stars or black holes. "By the eternal void," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It has been so very long." The holographic display shifted, showing her homeworld, as it had been, a paradise of crystal cities and floating gardens. Then it showed what remained, a dead rock orbiting a dying star. "I am Vexandra of the royal Zapirian lineage," she said, her voice gaining strength as she accepted the terrible truth. "Last daughter of a dead empire, this vessel is the resonance of eternity, sent into the void when our civilization faced extinction." Kai watched in fascination as she explained her people's final desperate gambit. The Zapirians had achieved incredible longevity and technological advancement, but their refined genetics had become so specialized that compatible mates were increasingly rare. As their empire crumbled before an ancient enemy, the royal bloodlines had been placed in stasis, ships programmed to search the galaxy for genetically compatible species. "Your ship found me," Kai said, "but I'm human. We're probably not even from the same evolutionary tree." Vexandra turned to study him with new interest, her violet eyes seeming to peer into his very soul. "The ship chose you specifically. That means—" She placed her hand on a crystalline console, and new displays appeared around them. "Show me his genetic pattern," she commanded. The ship scanned Kai through his suit, projecting a complex double helix that rotated slowly in the air. Between them, Vexandra gasped, her free hand rising to cover her mouth. "Impossible, yet undeniable. You carry dormant Zapirian markers in your DNA. Your species, some of your ancestors were touched by mine." "That's crazy," Kai protested, but even as he spoke, he felt a strange resonance building between them. The ship's harmonics seemed to be affecting him on a cellular level, awakening something that had slumbered in his bloodline for countless generations. Vexandra stepped closer, her fear replaced by wonder. "May I?" she asked, reaching toward his helmet seals. When he nodded, she carefully removed his helmet, gasping as his scent reached her. "The recognition protocols are activating," she breathed. "You smell like home, like the crystal gardens of Zephyros before the darkness came." Their faces were inches apart now, and Kai could feel the warmth radiating from her luminescent skin. "What does this mean?" he asked. "It means," Vexandra said, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper, "that after 10,000 years of searching, the resonance of eternity has finally found what it was looking for, not just a compatible mate but the genetic key to restore my people." Before Kai could respond, she pressed her forehead against his, and suddenly his mind exploded with visions of her world, soaring crystal spires, beings of impossible beauty, dancing among the stars, gardens that bloomed with living light. He saw her memories, a young princess watching her empire burn, making the terrible choice to sleep forever, rather than watch her people fade into extinction. "I feel your loneliness," she whispered as the mental connection deepened. "Drifting alone through the void, searching for something you could never name. We are kindred spirits, you and I, both exiles seeking our place among the stars." When the connection finally broke, they remained close, both breathing hard from the intensity of the shared experience. The ship around them hummed with new energy, its systems responding to their joined presence. "The ship is bonding us," Vexandra explained. "It recognizes you as my destined mate. But Kai of Earth, you must understand, this path leads to wonders beyond imagination, but also to dangers that destroyed a civilization. The choice is yours." Kai looked into her violet eyes and saw not just alien beauty, but a kindred soul who had endured loss and loneliness just as he had. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he could not abandon her to face it alone. "Then let's wake up your ship completely," he said, "and find out what we're really capable of together." The ship's central consciousness materialized before them as a shifting column of light and energy. "I am Nexus," it spoke in harmonized tones that resonated through their bones. "I have waited 10 millennia to fulfill my primary directive. Kai, Voss of Terra, your genetic matrix contains the dormant essence of the ancient Zapirian-Terran hybrid program." Vexandra's eyes widened with understanding. "The seeding protocol. I thought it was myth, stories told to children about our people visiting primitive worlds." "No myth," Nexus confirmed, displaying holographic records of sleek Zapirian vessels visiting early Earth. 7,000 years ago, when your empire first detected the approaching Shamoth threat, exploration fleets seeded compatible genetic material across 17 worlds. Most failed to take root, but Terra's population successfully integrated the dormant sequences. Kai watched in awe as the display showed ancient Zapirians walking among early human civilizations, their advanced technology appearing as magic to primitive observers. "So that's why your ship chose me? I'm some kind of genetic sleeper agent?" "You are the convergence," Vexandra said, approaching him with new reverence. "The bridge between our species. But for the bonding to be complete, for the restoration protocols to activate, we must—" She paused, a luminescent blush coloring her cheeks. "We must what?" Kai asked, though the ship's harmonic resonance was already affecting him, making his pulse race and his skin tingle with anticipation. "The Zapirian bonding ritual requires complete unity, mind, body, and soul," she explained, her voice husky with sudden desire. "It will awaken your dormant abilities and create a permanent link between us. But once begun, it cannot be undone." The chamber around them began to change, walls flowing like liquid to create a more intimate space, filled with soft bioluminescent flowers that released an intoxicating fragrance. The ship was preparing for the ancient ceremony, responding to both their physiological and emotional states. "Are you certain?" Vexandra asked, stepping closer until they were breathing the same air. "This bond will change you forever. You will become something new, neither fully human nor Zapirian, but a synthesis of both." Instead of answering with words, Kai reached out to trace the luminescent patterns on her skin. Where he touched, her natural glow intensified, and he gasped as pleasure unlike anything he'd ever experienced shot through his nervous system. Their connection was already forming, their bioelectric fields beginning to synchronize. "I've never felt anything like this," he whispered as she pressed closer to him, her tall frame fitting perfectly against his as if they had been designed for each other. "Nor I," she breathed against his neck. The bonding chooses its own timing, its own intensity. We are powerless before it now. Their first kiss was like lightning striking, a fusion of sensations that went far beyond physical pleasure. Through their linked consciousness, Kai experienced sensation as a Zapirian would, every nerve ending amplified and transformed. Vexandra cried out as human emotions flooded through her, raw and immediate in ways her refined people had forgotten. As their bodies moved together in the ancient dance of bonding, the ship itself seemed to pulse with their shared rhythm. The bioluminescent patterns on the wall synchronized with their heartbeats, and the air itself seemed to sing with harmonic frequencies that elevated their union beyond mere physical joining. Vexandra's skin became incandescent as their passion peaked, and Kai felt his own dormant abilities awakening. He could suddenly perceive electromagnetic fields, sense the quantum fluctuations in spacetime, and feel the ship's vast consciousness welcoming him as its new co-pilot. "I can feel everything," he gasped as they held each other in the afterglow. "The ship, the stars, even distant worlds. How is this possible?" "Your hybrid nature is asserting itself," Vexandra explained, tracing glowing patterns on his chest that now mirrored hers. "We are truly bonded now, two minds sharing one destiny." Nexus's voice surrounded them with warmth and approval. "The transformation is complete. Kai Voss, you now carry active Zapirian genetic sequences. Together, you and Vexandra can access the ship's full capabilities." As if to demonstrate, the chamber walls became transparent, revealing the magnificent scope of the resonance of eternity. What Kai had thought was a single ship was actually an entire city in space. Miles of crystal corridors, hanging gardens, and technological wonders beyond human comprehension. "This is your inheritance," Vexandra said, standing beside him as they gazed out at their new domain. "Our people built this vessel not just as an ark, but as a mobile world capable of nurturing new civilizations. They explored their expanded home together, marveling at chambers filled with preserved Zapirian art and culture, vast hydroponic gardens that were already beginning to bloom in response to their presence, and technological workshops that could fabricate anything they could imagine. In the ship's memory banks, they discovered the true scope of their mission. The resonance carried genetic templates for thousands of species, along with the technology to terraform worlds and guide the evolution of new civilizations. They were not just mates. They were the parents of a new golden age. But as they stood in the ship's observation deck, watching distant stars wheel by, Vexandra's expression grew troubled. "What is it?" Kai asked, their mental bond allowing him to sense her distress. "The Shamoth," she said quietly. "When the ship's systems fully activated, it sent out a beacon, a signal that our enemies have been waiting millennia to detect. They will come for us now, just as they came for my people before." "Then we'll be ready for them," Kai said, his new abilities allowing him to interface directly with the ship's defensive systems. "We have something they don't expect, the union of two civilizations, the best of both our species." Vexandra smiled, her luminescent beauty enhanced by love and hope. "Yes, my bonded one. Together we are more than the sum of our parts, but the battle ahead will test everything we've become." As if summoned by her words, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. On the displays around them, dark shapes were emerging from hyperspace, an advanced scout force of the ancient enemy that had destroyed the Zapirian Empire. The Shamoth had found them, and the real test of their bond was about to begin. The enemy ships materialized from hyperspace like nightmares given form, twisted amalgamations of organic tissue and dark metal that seemed to devour light itself. Kai counted at least 20 vessels in the advance formation, each one larger than most human battleships and pulsing with malevolent energy. "Shamoth," Vexandra whispered, her luminescent skin dimming with remembered terror. "The devourers of worlds. They consume entire civilizations to fuel their endless reproduction." Through their bond, Kai felt her memories of the final battle above Zephyros, millions of crystal ships falling like broken stars as the dark fleet harvested everything that had once been beautiful about her world. The Shamoth didn't just kill, They absorbed the essence of their victims, growing stronger with each civilization they consumed. "How did your people fight them before?" Kai asked, his consciousness already interfacing with the resonance of eternity's defensive systems. The ship responded to his hybrid nature, weapon systems that had slumbered for millennia coming online with eager anticipation. "We couldn't," Vexandra admitted, tears streaming down her face. "They adapted to every weapon we created, absorbed our energy technologies, turned our own innovations against us. That's why the royal ships were sent out, not to escape, but to find something they'd never encountered before." Something like humanity, Kai realized, understanding flooding through their mental link. That's why the bonding was necessary. "I don't just carry Zapirian genetics. I carry human unpredictability, human adaptability." The leading Shamoth vessel opened communication channels, broadcasting in the universal mathematical language that all spacefaring species eventually discovered. But the message that came through was filtered through millennia of absorbed civilizations, voices of the dead speaking in perfect unison. "Royal offspring detected. Surrender genetic material for absorption. Resistance will result in painful extraction." "They want to harvest us," Vexandra said, her fear giving way to righteous anger. "Turn us into fuel for their expansion across the galaxy." Kai felt his human instincts asserting themselves, the same stubborn refusal to submit that had driven his species from caves to the stars. "Then let's show them what they've never seen before. How does this ship fight?" Vexandra placed her hands on the primary control matrix, her consciousness merging with Nexus and the ship's vast intelligence. The resonance was designed as both sanctuary and weapon. "Watch and learn, my beloved." The ship's hull began to shift and flow, revealing weapon ports that sparkled with contained stellar energy. But instead of firing immediately, the resonance began to sing, a harmonic frequency that resonated through hyperspace itself. "Sonic warfare?" Kai asked, but the answer came through their bond before Vexandra could speak. The song wasn't just sound. It was a manipulation of reality's fundamental frequencies, a technology that worked by convincing the universe to rearrange itself on command. The nearest Shamoth vessels recoiled as their dark hulls began to resonate in harmony with the ship's song. For creatures that existed by consuming and corrupting, the pure mathematics of Zapirian harmony was like acid on their consciousness. "It's working," Kai exclaimed, but his triumph was short-lived. The enemy fleet began to adapt, their organic components mutating to block the harmonic frequencies. Dark tentacles erupted from their hulls, reaching toward the resonance with hungry intent. "They learned too quickly," Vexandra said, switching to direct energy weapons. Beams of crystallized starlight lanced out from their ship, but the Shamoth vessels absorbed the energy and grew larger, their appetite feeding on Zapirian technology just as it had 10,000 years ago. Kai felt desperation creeping through their bond, but also something else, an opportunity that neither species had possessed alone. "Let me try something," he said, placing his hands beside hers on the control matrix. "Kai, no, human technology is primitive compared to—" "Exactly," he interrupted, his hybrid consciousness reaching into systems that had never been designed for human thought patterns. "They've absorbed every advanced civilization they've encountered, but they've never faced creative chaos." Instead of using the ship's elegant harmonic weapons, Kai began improvising, overloading power conduits to create unpredictable energy, discharges using the fabrication systems to create projectiles out of random debris, even reprogramming the life support systems to vent atmosphere in specific patterns. The Shamoth fleet faltered, their collective intelligence struggling to process such seemingly random tactics. They had evolved to counter logical, predictable warfare, not the beautiful insanity of human improvisation enhanced by Zapirian technology. "You magnificent creature," Vexandra breathed, her admiration and love flooding through their bond as she saw what he was accomplishing. "You're fighting them with controlled disorder." Working together, they began to push back the enemy formation. Kai's chaotic strategies kept the Shamoth off balance while Vexandra's precise control maximized the effectiveness of each improvised attack. Their bond allowed them to switch tactics instantly, their combined consciousness moving faster than either could manage alone. But as they fought, more enemy ships continued to arrive. The advanced scouts had called for reinforcements, and the Dark Fleet was growing exponentially. Soon they would be outnumbered 100 to 1. "We can't fight them all," Vexandra said, exhaustion beginning to show in her luminescent features. "There are too many, and they're learning from each engagement." Kai pulled her close, their bodies pressed together as their consciousness merged completely. In that moment of total unity, he felt something unprecedented, not just their individual abilities, but a synthesis that transcended both species. Through their bond, he could sense potential futures, branching possibilities that led to either ultimate victory or final extinction. "There's another way," he said, showing her what he'd glimpsed in their joined prescience. "The ship isn't just a weapon. It's a tool of creation. What if instead of fighting them, we gave them something they've never encountered before?" "I don't understand," she said, but even as she spoke, she was beginning to perceive what he meant through their shared consciousness. "Life," Kai said simply. "Real, chaotic, unpredictable life. The Shamoth consume civilizations, but they've never faced one that could reproduce and evolve faster than they could adapt." Around them, the ship began to respond to their unified vision. The resonance of eternity wasn't just carrying genetic templates. It was designed to seed entire galaxies with new forms of life, and with their hybrid nature guiding it, they could create something that would either save the galaxy or doom it forever. The final gambit was about to begin, and everything depended on whether love could triumph over the hunger that devoured worlds. The resonance of eternity transformed around them, its crystal corridors flowing like liquid light as it reconfigured itself for its ultimate purpose. No longer merely a ship, it became a living forge of creation, drawing power from the quantum foam itself to birth new possibilities into existence. "Are you certain about this?" Vexandra asked as they stood at the heart of the transformation, their bodies glowing with shared energy. Around them, hundreds of Shamoth vessels pressed closer, their dark hunger creating a sphere of death that blotted out the stars. "As certain as I am of loving you," Kai replied, their mental bond carrying depths of emotion that words could never express. Through their connection, he showed her the vision that had crystallized in their joined consciousness, not destruction, but transcendence. Together, they activated the Genesis protocol that had been hidden in the ship's deepest programming. The resonance began broadcasting their combined genetic template not just into space, but into the fundamental structure of reality itself. Every planet, every asteroid, every grain of cosmic dust within 1,000 light-years became a potential cradle for their hybrid offspring. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The Shamoth fleet, evolved to consume static civilizations, found themselves surrounded by millions of nascent life forms that existed in constant flux. Each new being carried both Zapirian elegance and human unpredictability, creating an explosion of creative evolution that the ancient devourers couldn't process or absorb. "Impossible," came the unified voice of the Shamoth collective. But for the first time in eons, uncertainty crept into their communication. Life forms reproducing at quantum frequencies. Genetic templates shifting faster than absorption protocols can adapt. Kai and Vexandra watched through the ship's sensors as their children spread across the galaxy. Beings of light and flesh, crystal and carbon, each one unique yet carrying the essence of their love. Some took root on distant worlds, while others existed as pure energy in the void between stars. "We're not just creating life," Vexandra realized, her consciousness expanding to encompass the scope of what they'd unleashed. "We're creating evolution itself, life that learns and grows faster than any force can destroy it." The Shamoth fleet began to retreat, their ancient hunger overwhelmed by prey that transformed faster than they could devour it. But even as the immediate threat withdrew, Kai knew this was only the beginning. Their children would spread throughout the galaxy, and eventually, the Shamoth would return with new strategies. "Then we'll be ready," he said, reading her thoughts through their bond. "Each generation will be stronger, more adaptable than the last. We're not just preserving our species, We're ensuring that life itself becomes indestructible. As the enemy fleet disappeared into hyperspace, the Resonance settled into its new configuration as a mobile nursery for their expanding civilization. Gardens bloomed throughout the ship, tended by the first generation of their hybrid children, beings who appeared moments after conception, already mature and filled with inherited knowledge. "Mother, Father," spoke their first daughter, a radiant being who combined Vexandra's luminescent beauty with Kai's human warmth. "We feel the call of distant worlds. May we go forth and spread life to the dark corners of the galaxy?" "Go with our blessing," Vexandra said, tears of joy streaming down her face as she embraced the daughter they had created through love and will. "Make the universe bright with possibility." One by one, their children departed for distant worlds, carrying seeds of transformation that would bloom into new civilizations. Some went to planets that had never known life, while others sought out species that needed guidance to reach their full potential. Years passed like flowing water as the Resonance continued its eternal journey. Kai and Vexandra, transformed by Zapirian technology into beings of near-immortal longevity, watched as their legacy spread across the galaxy. Through their bond, they could sense each new world that awakened to life, each species that learned to reach for the stars. "Tenti, you ever regret it?" Vexandra asked as they stood together in their private garden, watching newborn stars ignite in a nebula their children had chosen to populate. "Giving up the simple life you knew for this eternal responsibility?" Kai pulled her close, marveling at how perfectly she still fit in his arms after all these years. "How could I regret the greatest love story in galactic history?" he said, their bond carrying laughter and desire that had only grown stronger with time. Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of stardust and infinite possibility. Even after decades together, their physical connection remained as intense as their first bonding, enhanced by the deep spiritual unity that linked their souls across space and time. "The Shamoth are stirring again," Vexandra murmured against his lips, her consciousness touching the edge of their collective intelligence. "They've spent 50 years adapting to our children's chaos. They believe they've found a counter-strategy." "Then it's time for the next phase," Kai said, his hybrid nature already perceiving the solution through their joined prescience. "Our children have learned to create and preserve life. Now they must learn to defend it with the same passion that created them." The Resonance of eternity changed course, heading for the spiral arm where their first children had established the most successful civilizations. It was time to teach the next generation that love was not just about creation, but about fighting for what you cherished most. As they traveled toward their descendants, Kai and Vexandra made love with the same desperate passion that had first bonded them, their unity creating ripples in space-time that their children would feel across the galaxy. Each wave of pleasure they shared became a signal to their offspring. Prepare for war, but remember that you fight not from hatred, but from love. The stars themselves seemed to pulse in rhythm with their joined heartbeat as the greatest love story in the galaxy prepared for its next chapter. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything else. Together, united in a bond that had already transformed the universe. In the distance, dark ships began to move, but they no longer faced a single vessel carrying two desperate lovers. They faced an entire galaxy that had learned to love as fiercely as it lived, and that would prove to be a force that even the devourers of worlds could not overcome. The legacy of stars would endure, written in the eternal dance of two souls, who had chosen each other across the vast darkness of space and whose love had literally reshaped reality itself.